Alright guys, Kremp again today. Hope you're doing well and enjoying your day so far, and here we go again. The pros were asked to give their opinion by the CDL on which pro players are more likely to turn up late to practice, and some familiar names cropping up, it must be said. Whether this is due to the lasting stigma over the last few years, whether this is still a problem during this season for OpTic Texas, does remain to be seen, but lots to dive into today. Very much on Twitter, your thoughts in the comments below. Hit the like button if you enjoy, subscribe if you're new as always, I'd greatly appreciate it. First of all, I did want to mention that Kremp is indeed going to the Saudi Arabian Grand Prix. Now, this is, I believe, I was like, okay, who is funding this, right? Kremp's flying first class here on Emirates from, I'm guessing from Dallas or whatever, over to, through Dubai and then to Jeddah for the Grand Prix. This is his hotel room, which looks more like an apartment as far as I'm concerned. But as he gets to the bed here, we can see that on the table, so I think he's got paddock pass and all this stuff. Kind of jealous, I'm not going to lie, this weekend. But as we can see, welcome to Jeddah, Kremp 6 and Esports World Cup, right? So I think this is kind of what this is all about. That we know that Saudi Arabia, they held the Gamers 8 tournament, I think last year, maybe the year before, which is now effectively becoming the Esports World Cup. They had Ronaldo there, of course, to kind of promote it and stuff, and we've seen that be happening. So I imagine, well, clearly, this is involved in that. So Kremp and maybe others getting involved in this as part of the development for the Esports World Cup, which I'm pretty sure is happening this summer, actually. Now, it's not going to be like the Cold World Championship is going to be there or anything, but there has been a feeling that that may well be the case in due course. Also got to mention, there was some, like, crazy drama on Twitter over the last couple of days or so, to be honest, and Ghosty has been doing his best to analyze it and break it all down. If you guys didn't see the whole Pro Loot stuff yesterday, there was a big drama over the Pro Loot's team versus Temp's team in the, well, basically they were trying to get to top 3 in the Challengers Elite. There was a replay in the round 11. We talked about it yesterday. There was, drama on either side, and I understand Pro Loot's frustrations with the way the situation went, but he did go on a fair bit of a rampage yesterday on everything that was going down behind the scenes. And then last night as well, Sparks was just going off. I don't really know why, and I'm not going to read through the tweets and analyze this in much detail. My only thinking is that this guy's had a few too many beers, right? Because I don't know why he was going so rogue on Twitter last night, just calling out all sorts of people, basically clowning on some of the players that play COD nowadays. Of course, Sparks had a difficult time over the last couple of years after having won the Major 2 tournament with the Volk, of course, right, famously back in Vanguard with Los Angeles Guerrillas, and then ever since then it didn't really work out for him so well, gone back to Challenges, hasn't really made the hay that he would have liked to have done. Of course, they didn't win the Challengers Cup yesterday. We'll discuss that in a second. So, yeah, I don't really know what was happening here, and even Shah Madrid was coming back at him. I thought was rather entertaining, I suppose. But speaking of that Challengers Cup, the winner was the Boston Breach Academy, led by Mr. CammyMVP. So this is actually a really interesting storyline to keep your eyes on here. So Breach Academy, they have been a good team for some time. Arguably, they've been held back a bit by Doug Santa Martin for the last couple of years. It goes both ways, right? Because I think Doug did help get the best out of some of the players on those teams. But of course, when you bring in someone that can actually slay, it does tend to help a fair bit. So here's Cammy going 37 in 22 here on the Invasion Control to win that map, and of course putting them one map away, and then they go on to win the tournament. So the Breach Academy, Stage 1 NA Elite Champions, Pentagram, JurNii, Yeez, and now Cammy as well, who was effectively, they don't do an official MVP, but honorary MVP, shall we say, with these numbers. Overall throughout Stage 1, 1.07 KD, 1.22 in the playoffs, 1.3 in the finals, 1.4 in the playoff search and destroy, and pretty much a 1.4 in the playoffs control as well. So this is interesting because I don't know if Cammy lost a bit of confidence over the last couple of years or whatever. He did mention on stream a little while ago now that he feels like he is at his best when he's playing with an actual main AR that plays like a main, and he can focus on doing what needs to be done on the map from his home perspective rather than thinking, okay, well, I need to do this, need to do that because that's my job as the main or whatever. And maybe he felt like, I think he did feel like, Ghosty and himself as an AR duo from even a playstyle perspective wasn't really working. Cammy loved his time alongside Insight, and you can probably understand why, given the way that Insight plays the game. So the feeling might be that Cammy could potentially still thrive in the league if he's alongside a player that plays in that way. Maybe a slower, more traditional AR, of which there are a couple of teams that Cammy could arguably step in to improve. And I still think that Cammy, despite the fact that he got dropped this season by the Los Angeles Thieves, I still think that players rate him to some extent. There's always been talk about Cammy in that upper echelon of players, and yes, he's had a bad couple of years, but I think the players recognise how talented he is, and I don't think that's really gone away. So there's a couple of teams that Cammy will be interested in joining, and potentially those teams will be interested in getting Cammy into their team. And yes, by the numbers, he didn't have a great start to the season on Thieves, but if a team does need a firepower upgrade in that kind of flex category, Cammy's probably worth one more go. If it doesn't work out this time, then, you know, fair enough. But I do think Cammy will get back into the league, just because he has been frying, to be fair, since he's been down in challenges. As he says here, champion of the Little League, and even Dashy actually comes out and says, yeah, well played, Cammy, for that result. So a couple of teams, of course, come to mind. Minnesota Rocker is probably the main one right now, just because Awakening has not been performing at the level that we expected. Accuracy is one of those more traditional, slower AR players that Cammy could possibly thrive alongside it. Difficult to say. The other team, of course, to be honest, is Boston themselves. I mentioned this right when Cammy first went down to challenges and people were roasting me for it, but I feel like over time it's become more and more of a realistic possibility that, again, Slasher is traditional AR player, a bit faster, to be fair, than Accuracy, not as iron boots, and he does get a lot of kills and engagements at times, but, you know, still, I feel like Cammy and Slasher as an AR duo might be something to consider if this whole Slasher Priestahh thing doesn't work, continues to not work, let's say on Boston Bridge. Of course, they play OpTic today. We'll discuss here in just a couple of minutes. So there's other teams as well that Cammy could be considered for, and if he continues to play like this in challenges, I think come Major 2, it's almost certain that somebody's going to be on the phone to Cammy to get him in. Of course, he's kind of part of Boston right now, which makes maybe that slightly more likely. And also, some of Cammy's competition for those spots has fallen away a little bit. The FaZe Black team, by the way, ever since Asim left, ever since, of course, Kremp left to go up to the league, they have been struggling somewhat. Brack, Exceed, Joe Deceives, and Lunas was their team. Now they've got Dylan Rex coming in to complete the roster, and Lunas is now gone. He's going to join, I think, SGP Syndicate with, I think, Major Maniac parting ways with those guys. But still, Lunas, right, was considered for, let's say, around the Boston Major time to be one of the top prospect, you know, basically fast AR, aggressive, slaying options from the challenger side. And now FaZe Black have, you know, dropped him. He's going to a different team. Not like his talent has vanished all of a sudden, but it does mean that for guys like Cammy, in terms of a flex role position as someone that can slay, he now is one of the, if not the, you know, number one option. And there are plenty of teams, I think, right now that could benefit from an improvement in that role. Whether Cammy's the guy to do that, there's obviously, you know, the jury is very much still out on that. But if teams are looking for a change, definitely one to keep an eye on. I guess it could also apply to Ravens as well. We don't really know how long this Clay felony thing is going to last. It may last for the rest of the season. My feeling was when this was confirmed that it might not, just because of, you know, online, the slaying from felony hasn't really been there. And could Clay and Cammy work as an AR duo? Maybe, but then again, is Clay an insight? Not really. This guy plays fast and aggressive, so maybe that's not really the option. And obviously, it depends what Clay thinks about the situation as well. But I will say, here we are in Karachi. Karachi, a map that, let's be real, it's not considered to be the worst for spawns. Like, we've got Subbase, we've got Invasion, and probably some other ones as well I consider to be worse than Karachi. But have a look at this, right? Here we are on the rotation over to P3, and it's an absolute mess. I don't understand. Even Clay says, just because you can predict this doesn't mean it's a good spawning system. But even then, can you predict this? I think you've got to be pretty damn good to predict this, right? Because, you know, the blue team looks to have done pretty well on the rotation here. Number 1 takes down number 5 to lock down this situation. Then all of a sudden, the red team is spawning behind number 4. Then the blue team starts spawning behind number 7. And then the red team gets shot in the back again. So, you know, an absolute mess, really. The spawns there over towards this P3, spawning on the bottom side. It's, yeah, they're just spawning so close to each other. I just don't understand how that's even the case. And I kind of get how the red team pushed out here, but, you know, it shouldn't be the case. Now, what I will say, though, is that Sledgehammer actually replied to this, can you believe it, and said, just a quick note to say our team is still working on spawn improvements. Please keep sharing clips like this to help us show the whole picture. They really help us figure things out. So good to see, right, because I think there's kind of been a feeling that despite Sledgehammer really looking like they cared, and I think they did, and I think they still do, over the kind of winter New Year period, it's been a bit lackluster since then, hasn't it? They did the major update, the game is kind of broken in many respects, and they haven't really said much. Now they're saying, look, we're still going to try and fix it, we're going to try and make spawn improvements, and hopefully that continues to be the case. However, we have to talk about these videos that the COD League came out with yesterday. Now, just to keep in mind, these videos were recorded during Major 1. I remember when they were recorded, it was on the Wednesday, I'm pretty sure before the event, they set up the green room. So this is the green room where the casters stay and all this stuff behind the scenes, like, you know, you guys know the Boston event if you went there anyway, on that second floor lounge thing. So on the Wednesday, the media day, they got this all set up and they had the players sitting there and asking various questions over, you know, a few hours just to get their opinions. So some good answers here, of course. We had Scrap, we had Drazah, we had plenty of others giving their opinion. There was also the opinions on, you know, which players the most likely to team kill in the league. Most guys, I'm guessing, you know, saying their own teammates, right? Scrappy says Stanley because we know that they have an interesting relationship going back a few years. However, we do have another very interesting question that was asked by the guys putting this content together: which player is most likely in the league to turn up late to practice? Or as they describe it, to sleep through the first set of scrims. And this is, for all intents and purposes, like a Dashy hit piece, really. I mean, all the answers here for the pro players, pretty much Dashy and Pred, right? And Pred, I think, was known as being a bit of a problem for this when he was on CDL Surge, and that doesn't necessarily seem to have changed now that he's on OpTic Texas. I mean, all of the guys are saying the same answer here, and I've just got to wonder whether this is just because of the carryover of the stigma over the last few years, or whether this is like legitimately a problem again behind the scenes.
Who's most likely to sleep through their first set of scrims?
Dashy.
I'd say Pred.
TJ.
Pred.
There's so many people that can sleep through it. I don't know. There's like half the league that would sleep through the first set.
Definitely me or Brennan. I'm stuck between like 3 people. I can't say all 3. I gotta choose one. Let's say Dashy. Dashy.
Dashy.
The person most likely to sleep through scrims is probably gonna be Dashy.
Sleep in? Pred again.
Me. Yeah, I think me.
So we do tend to get mixed messages on this type of stuff, right? Because the feeling has been, and I think Kenny has said, that Dashy has been fine. You know, he's been way more committed, turning up on time and all this stuff. Now, I guess at the same time, is it, you know, if you're 10 minutes late to practice, I think even Sib has said this, that the practice never tends to really start perfectly on time anyway. Like, every team can be a little bit late to practice. It's their job at the end of the day, and I know that this should be the case, but it is seemingly the reality of the situation that players turn up late to practice. Now, sleeping through practice or sleeping in late is a bit of a different story. And I don't know, we haven't really heard anything from the OpTic camp, or really from other teams as well, because sometimes you'll see tweets from other players that say, at Dashy, wake up for scrims, buddy, or whatever, and, you know, then we start to talk about it again. But I think generally what we've heard from the OpTic camp is it's been better now maybe than it was previously, and Dashy seems very much locked in. I think it's a bit of a concern, however, that both Dashy and Pred mentioned, right, by basically every single player, because they're on the same team, and if both of those guys have that of a tendency, then, you know, it's Karma, who also maybe has that as a bit of a tendency, and Kenny, who's trying to control the culture of the team. It becomes a bit more difficult when it's 2 players rather than 1 player, theoretically. But I guess we don't really know, because the OpTic guys haven't mentioned this is a problem. The feeling has tended to be that it's got significantly better this season, and certainly last season as well, and it probably has. And my feeling is that this might just be a carryover of the stigma over the last couple of years. And as I say, this clip now is, you know, a good month and a half old, pretty much, because this was recorded just before Major 1. So if it was a problem leading up to Major 1, then maybe it's fine now. But I thought nonetheless, very entertaining and interesting discussion going into some important matches this weekend, because let's not forget, this is OpTic's real first test in theory this Sunday. Today will be interesting because Boston can be good. Boston are a frustrating team to watch because you never really know what you're going to get from these guys, but as I say, I think they've been consistently underwhelming, and OpTic should be the better team. But, you know, Boston and Rocker and guys on that kind of level, Rocker probably should have beaten OpTic, right? So Boston certainly can. I don't think they will. Can you believe it, by the way? OpTic play first today. Unbelievable scenes. So they play Boston first up. FaZe Thieves, when my eyes look at FaZe Thieves, I think, wow, like, here we go. But then I recognize that actually Thieves are not the team that they once did. So that's a bit of a shame. But to be fair, Thieves have been making strides. And my question is, going into the major, is it going to be Vegas or is it going to be Thieves as the dark horse? Because I feel like every other team is kind of in a shambles further down than that. And maybe Thieves could be that team. They've won a couple of Game 5s lately. FaZe should be majorly favoured, but I do think Thieves have been getting better. So if Thieves can win a map in this series, or at least make it somewhat competitive, I'll feel quite good about them going into the major, but I'm going to take, obviously, FaZe, I think, 3-1 in this. And then Ravens Gorillas, I do still kind of feel like this can go either way, but the fact that Gorillas lost to Surge last week makes me just give absolutely no faith that they're going to beat the Ravens here. So yeah, probably going to go OpTic FaZe Ravens, but very much interested your thoughts on all this stuff in the comment section below. Hit the like button if you enjoyed, subscribe if you're new, take care, and I'll see you next time.